being in partnership, and especially a female partnership in business, is really challenging. You have to take the relationship almost as seriously as a marriage. You have money mixed together, you have your dreams mixed together, you have your future mixed together. So much that is so deeply important that it should be almost as important as your marriage because it's impacting that much of your life.
Welcome. I'm Alyssa Nobriga, your host of the Healing and Human Potential podcast, a place for you to discover the multidimensionality of what it means to be human. Over the past 20 years, I've trained thousands of coaches in my methodology, leveraging my experience as a former psychotherapist, and I'm here to share with you all the wisdom and insights that I've learned along the way. Each week, I'll share with you life-changing tools to support you in awakening and manifesting your dream life from the inside out. We'll be exploring the intersection between ancient wisdom and modern everyday life, really diving deep into the art of human potential through the lens of psychology, spirituality, and coaching. Let's let the magic unfold. I have the privilege of having Krista Williams on the podcast today. She is the co-founder of one of the top 50 podcasts, Almost 30, which is also a global brand. Krista is the creator of It's Krista, which provides an honest take on health, wellness, spirituality, and style. And she is a leading expert on topics such as entrepreneurship, personal development, modern spirituality, and body acceptance. We drop into an intimate, heartfelt conversation around conscious business, conscious friendships. I hope you enjoy. So there's so much that I want to dive into a conversation with you. And I just love you so much.
I love you.
And I love that you have this beautiful brand, the Almost 30 podcast, top podcast, and community that you really pour into, but you also have a really beautiful spiritual practice. And I would love to start a conversation about conscious business, really leading from the heart. I know for me, it's like the busier I am in the physical world, the deeper my practices need to be. I think of it like a ballast in a ship where they keep me rooted in reality, no matter what happens with the winds of life. And I sort of think of meditation and spiritual practices as the pregame and our real life as the real game. There's a preparation for so that we can live open and true. And I really take business as a spiritual path, really to help not only heal, but also awaken. And using everyday life triggers to support our own evolution. Being so spiritually oriented and running a business, what's been your experience with these?
Yeah, I think firstly, I never thought it would be possible to be a spiritual being within business. You know, I grew up in a small town in Ohio, and I grew up around a culture and people that didn't really have the opportunity or chance to do anything that they loved. I never saw anybody that was an entrepreneur. I never saw anyone that owned their own business. I never saw anyone that weaved their own authenticity into what they did. Everyone that I knew, my parents included, were people that had their jobs and they were a certain type of person at their job. And then they came home and then they were a certain type of person at home. And then they had their dreams that sort of died on the vine.
Okay.
So I had to really expand my mind and capacity and belief that I could actually be myself within business and be a spiritual being in business. So when I was born into this world, I've been a spiritual being my whole life. You know, at a young age, I was someone that was always exploring sort of the depths, like seeing things, very psychic, just kind of in my own experience. And so when I had my awakening and my Saturn return, and when we started Almost 30, it really was something that I just made my purpose and mission to start a business around something that I loved. And more importantly, just a business around being myself and being who I am.
I was thinking about you. I was like, you literally get paid to be yourself. Like you have oriented your life, but it takes authenticity and courage to really take a stand to authentically express.
And knowing yourself.
And to know yourself. And to risk, how will people hear what I'm sharing?
Oh yeah. And that's the whole thing. It's like, there's so much to that, because it's like, yes, I get paid to be myself, but sometimes I'm not being myself. Sometimes I'm not fully myself. You weave in and out of that authenticity all the time. I wish I could say that I'm always myself. I'm as much myself as I can, but I had to know myself so much deeper to really be able to be myself and do what I love. But it's so interesting because with Almost 30 being a podcast host and being someone that interviews people, it was the thing that was something that I did without even knowing it. Like, I'm someone that's so deeply interested in people. Like, I love interviewing. Like I just love learning. I channel very easily. I love to speak. I love to communicate. And that was born because I was like neglected when I was young. I never really had a connection that was really deep or intimate with my parents. So I had to interview them to get their attention.
Oh, wow.
I had to really be present for them. I almost had to like use self-erasure as a way to like grab them.
And get love.
So that was something I've done my whole life and is something now I do within my work very naturally, obviously. So it was something that was painful that turned into sort of the gold within what I do. But it's such a beautiful thing and I never take it for granted because I know there's so many people that, and I was one of them, that are out of authenticity most of the time and really want to do what they love.
This is such a fascinating story of like you had a coping strategy to get love by being interested in your parents and other. And as a way that has developed one of your gifts. But I also hear that you need to be authentic to yourself and use the double-edged sword so that you're really being mindful not to get lost in what others want.
Yes. And that's like been my work in the past 2 years is when am I doing that as like, when am I going too far with it? When have I completely self-abandoning? And even with the podcast, you know, we've done over 600 interviews. And recently I've felt like I'm kind of ready to move out of so many interviews because I love to do them. I love to be in conversation with people. It's my passion, but I'm ready to sort of practice more like, what do I have to say? What do I think? And I share that so often on the show, but it's a lot to hold space, to navigate, to do many different things in conversation that it gets a little bit tiring after a while. And I'm kind of ready to move out of that sort of way of being and into like a new phase of where I am.
And do you feel like your healing journey has catapulted some of that?
Yes.
I'm curious to hear some of about your healing journey. And I mean, you grew up in Ohio and then you always felt connected spiritually. And then you start a business that is very different from everything you've seen.
Yes.
And so walk me through some of the healing work that you value and what has really made a bigger impact in your life.
Yeah, the healing work has been instrumental, you know, in my success, instrumental in my personal relationship success, instrumental in my self-love. And I think as the past couple years have happened, I recently was divorced. That was a huge catapult into my healing, especially in the space around me coming out of codependency, me really coming into my own sovereign individuality and personality, someone that wasn't going to just use self-erasure as a way to get love. But internal family systems has been something that I deeply love, something that I'm now becoming IFS informed in. And what I really loved about that, what I really love about IFS is that it's really unblending parts of us so that we can have greater self-love. It's like, how can I look at the part of me that's incredibly controlling? Or the part of me that used self-erasure as a way of receiving love and learn to love that part instead of shaming, blaming, or trying to get rid of it.
Because each part of us is trying to serve us, but it's doing it unconsciously. It's trying to help us get the love, safety, belonging in the world. And if we become more conscious of, oh, thank you to that part of me that just wanted to make sure I was okay. Even if it's a critic, it's like, thank you for trying. That's actually what transforms it, which I love. That's a big part of what I do as well. And, and to embrace all parts of us is the real medicine.
Because self-sabotage is really a protective strategy.
You
know, and I remember when I first started in healing, I think the thing that catapulted me into healing was my relationship with my body. You know, I had such a hard relationship with my body and my weight and the way that I looked. And I grew up in a household where it was like very specific how you were supposed to look. And so that was so painful for me and gave me so much anxiety that was like my thing where I was like, I need to figure this out because I'm wasting so much energy and time on this body and on the loop thoughts around my body that I needed to figure it out. And when we think about IFS, all of the strategies and ways that I was binging or overeating or restricting were all ways to protect myself because I had the belief that if I wasn't thin or if I didn't look a certain way, that I would not be loved. So there's an aspect of me that's like, I have to do this in order to receive love. And when I could really get to know that part and be with that part and thank that part for all the work it's done and then also give it a break. Like, oh, you've been doing a lot of protecting. You've been doing a lot of service to me to save me from what you perceive to be something that's going to keep me from love, like you can actually take a break. We're going to have other parts step in and support me in like my healing journey.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, that's the real work. That's becoming more conscious, and even to love the saboteur.
Yeah.
And even to love the judge, the critic, all parts, because they're trying to help us. And so, I think that suffering has an intelligence to it.
Oh yeah.
I think that
suffering's where we do all the learning.
It's almost like if we don't proactively, my take on it is if we don't proactively do the work, life will show us where we're still stuck.
Yep.
And sometimes pain or suffering is the motivation to create the change. And so the fact that you proactively do it, I think, the healing work, the inner work that we do directly affects our outer world. And I don't know that everybody sees that or knows that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I would say that. I think what happens in your journey, and I'm curious if you feel like this is the same. For me, it was things had to be so painful for me to heal. And now it's more nuanced. Now I'm like, ooh, small moment. I'm like, ooh, as an example, I'm newly single. So I was on a trip and I noticed that when men would come up to talk to me, I would freeze. And so it was a small nuanced moment of being in touch with my body, being in touch with what's happening, being in touch with the present moment, noticing that I would freeze and being like, oh, what's that?
Yeah.
What's that part of me? What's that part of me that gets a little nervous?
Yeah.
And so it goes from the bolder moments of, having an eating disorder and maybe losing my job or whatever the things were to the small nuanced. And that's what's beautiful about healing. And I think healing can be really overwhelming once you get into it, where you're like, oh my God, this never stops.
Yeah.
There's always something.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll be like, okay, God, I know that there's always something, but give me a break. But when you can really have the tools and when you can leverage the tools to just have a little bit more finesse with it is when it gets really, really beautiful. When you can get curious with it, like, oh, what's that?
Yeah.
Where's that coming from? Like, what can we do with that? It gets really beautiful and fun. And then when you're in friendships and relationships where you have people that are able to hold and be with the nuance and be with the healing and be with you in the process and also support you in your growth is the biggest thing, because we can heal on our own. I think that's, some of the deepest work is in solitude and in silence and with ourselves or even with someone in therapy. But healing in relationship is so huge, because that's really when you put all the tools to work. And so healing with Lindsay or healing with my partner, with my friends has also been incredible, but only available when I became friends with conscious people, like you.
Yeah, where it's safe. I feel like you are truly, and I'm sure I know I'm not the only one, but you just make people feel safe in your presence. And I know that's the depth of work you've done on yourself. Yeah. And it also was your coping strategy.
Oh yeah.
And so, but it's such a gift of yours. And I hear that you turning that back onto yourself so that you can create that space inside yourself. And it's still one of your superpowers. Imagine having a fulfilling career doing what you love, working from anywhere in the world, setting your own hours while making good money and a big impact. If that lights you up, then I'm super excited to share with you today's sponsor, the Institute for Coaching Mastery. This is my robust, accredited year-long certification program for newer seasoned coaches, therapists, leaders, and those just looking to up-level their life in a profound way. We have an amazing community of students from all around the world who have really started their journey to expand with us both personally and professionally. And this experience is designed to give you the 3 things that you need to thrive. So first, you have all of the tools and support you need to move past what's been holding you back so that you can completely change the trajectory of your life. And then you learn how to masterfully and confidently facilitate transformation with your clients or your team, regardless of your niche. If you want to do health, business, relationship, or you just have no idea yet, we hold your hand through that. And then lastly, you'll receive my 6-figure and beyond signature roadmap that's customizable to meet you wherever you are. So whether you want to do high ticket sales, online marketing, or you just want to hit 6 figures without ever needing to go on social media, we've got you covered. And this truly is the most rewarding work in the world. We have new students now who have a waitlist of dream clients in under a year. We also have seasoned students who are doing $80,000 months. And this is really about creating lasting transformation from the inside out so that you can share your gifts and serve the world in all the ways that you're called to. And I've seen firsthand the power of what happens when you have the community to collaborate with, but you also have the right tools and resources to really thrive. And so whether you want to do your own personal development, you're wanting to become a coach, or you're just looking for a cutting edge approach to really grow your business, the Institute for Coaching Mastery is for you. you are held every single step of the way. And so if you want to get behind the scenes access to the Institute with 3 proven transformational tools for free to help you create the business and life you love, all you have to do is go to alyssanobriga.com/tools, or you can find us at alyssanobriga.com/apply now to see all the details and apply today. I remember, you've talked about a few times about your divorce.
Yeah.
And you also shared that this was a time where as you're shifting these things inside of you, like the expression of was no longer being in, I imagine, patterns or in that partnership because you've outgrown some of the things that were originally brought you guys together. Will you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I was with my partner for 10 years. We ended up getting married. It was a spiritual wedding. We didn't legally get married, but when we first met, we were so aligned. And I had this experience recently where I was on a flight and I was looking at emails that we had written to each other in like 2013. And we were speaking the same language. We were saying the same things. We had the same interests. We were just like very much the same. And I thought he was going to be my person forever. And there was just a point in time in our journey and in our healing where I just sort of kept running and it felt like he sort of stopped. And it felt like there was almost a regression, and it felt like there was more of an evolution or expansion. And when I say evolution or expansion, it kind of seems like I'm saying better or worse, but it was actually harder for me because that meant I had to go through deeper levels of my healing.
Yeah.
And when I really awoke to the parts of me that would self-abandon and the parts of me that were really accepting a relationship that was really good, but not great.
Yeah.
I realized that, it was probably time for our relationship to dissolve, and we're still friends and we love each other very much. But it was one of the hardest periods in time in my life, turning myself inside out, like for probably a year. Is this relationship hard because this growth is meant for me? Or is this hard because it's unaligned?
And that's such a powerful question.
Oh yeah, every day I would be like, God, what is it?
Yeah.
Soul, what is it? Self, what is it? And, I had a moment where one of my guides was super clear with me. We were in an argument and I was like crying on the side of my bed. And I'd made the commitment at the end of our relationship, I was going to be super open-hearted. I was going to stay in my heart. I was like, no matter what, I will stay in my heart. So that meant a lot of tears. And I was on the corner of my bed crying, and my guide was like, for the right person, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be yourself.
Wow.
And I was like, there was so long where I felt like I had to be perfect emotionally in order to get the right response, where I had to be calm, cool, collected, kind, warm, loving, tender, all the things. And the fiery rage and anger and frustration and just like the normal natural ebbs and flows of my emotions, especially as a Pisces, wasn't allowed or wasn't permitted. Because it would be met with the same equal response. And so when I realized that, I was like, you know what, like, I want someone that's going to be willing to go as deep with me as I am, and to go to a place where we can fully commit. And I think we were kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out at the end because we had such big fear.
Yeah. Fear of,
I think, not fear. I think at that point there had been a lot of resentment built. And, we had unfortunately not had the best fighting styles together. And that's one of the things, this more than I, but we didn't fight well.
Yeah.
And that really continued to rupture over time. And so I really realized and now really know that your fighting styles and the way that you handle conflict is so deeply important.
Yeah.
And so incredibly important in that it should bring you closer. The rupture should bring you closer. But for us, it was slowly bringing us further apart.
I love that you had that insight because as a couples therapist, I used to tell people, it doesn't matter if you fight, it's do you grow closer together as a result? And I would tell people to consciously, when they're not triggered, when they're in their prefrontal cortex, they have all systems online, outline how do you want to navigate rupture and argument? Because you can do it, you can map it out. I want to do it with respect. I want to do it with care. And understanding each other's wounds helps hold for them and not take it personal. Like, I made you feel that way. I know that, if I were your partner, I'd be like, I know that I'm triggering your need to please me so that you're okay. And then it'd be like, oh, I can hold that. Dream. Conscious friendships.
Stop it, Alyssa.
are here because we can do that for each other. I know before I met Emilio, my husband, I was practicing all these tools and things that I was discovering when I was becoming a therapist with my best friend because we Awesome.
Can't wait for my Emilio, baby.
Yes.
He's coming.
Yes, he is. Because it was okay, if I'm going to work through my own shadow work, I can do it with my friends. I can do it on my own. I think there's two schools of thought, and I'm a yes and. So there's a school of thought of 100% personal responsibility and use the relationship to heal. I think inside and then out, but both important. If the rupture happened in a relationship, it can also heal in the relationship, but not everybody's conscious.
Oh my God.
And so we could do that with our friendships as well, if we're not in relationship, and to have that self-awareness and the tools to navigate those. So I love that you are proactive.
Yeah, and I would say, and I'm curious if you agree, like for people listening, for me, it can be almost traumatic though to practice some of the tools on someone that's not conscious.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I would feel that sometimes where I'm like, I'm trying this thing, or I'm expressing this thing, I'm talking about this way of being, and with someone that's unconscious, it's just.
Yeah. I tend to do my inner work at that point. I never thought about it that way, but I'll do more personal responsibility work because you don't actually need them to change for you to be okay. Totally. And so why not do our own tools and work?
Totally. And you know, and I agree. And what I was doing in the end was so much self-soothing and so much of that self where it was like just me, where I'm like, I'm in a relationship with myself.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, this is completely alone. And I'm sure he was doing his own self-soothing in his own practice in his own way. So it's not like he's bad or I'm good, but I'm so grateful for Lindsay in my relationship. So Lindsay's my podcast co-host and best friend. And she's really been the playground for conscious relationship for me. And it's been really beautiful. You know, we can really be in that conscious relationship of like, ooh, I'm really noticing that, you know, my insecure attachment is kind of like inflamed right now in our relationship because I feel like you're not spending a lot of time at work.
Yeah.
And I feel like you're not really paying attention to the business, or I feel like you're doing this thing, and we can be really like putting the problem here.
Beautiful.
And then working through outside of ourselves, and even talking as if we're like third person about ourselves.
Yeah.
Like I'm really noticing that I'm really doing this, and this is the story I'm telling myself about you, and just practicing like these beautiful tools has helped me move with conflict in a way where I actually really appreciate it and I love it, and we're able to come closer together. So I'm so grateful for our relationship for just showing me what's possible in that, because it was hard for me before, you know, to have conscious communication around conflict. I was someone that would either be really hot or I would be completely submissive.
Yeah.
And just kind of submit to whatever anyone wanted. They'd be like, you said this. I'd be like, you're right. I fucking suck. I did. Like, I'm the worst. Or else I would wait till I sort of like had a deep reaction.
Yeah. That's typical.
Yeah.
That's typical, where don't set boundaries and then set harsh boundaries.
Yes.
Yeah. And I love that you have personal responsibility. When you were talking about with Lindsay, your co-founder, it's like, being able to understand, have enough self-awareness that we can speak it so that they can hold it in a really safe container, and then take responsibility without putting blame.
Yes.
I think personal responsibility, I think, is the number one hack for relationships. Nobody thinks—
Say more.
It is it's the foundation. The safety comes from that, becoming self-aware and then not blaming. And it's not sexy, but it is powerful as fuck.
The feeling in my body when someone's like, takes responsibility. It's just, oh my God, I'm so safe. And then I'm so encouraged to take my own responsibility. Like this is, and encouraging anyone who's listening, when you do practice, well, it might not happen in every relationship, but I've found that when I do take responsibility, the chances of someone else taking responsibility are so much greater.
Yeah, people mirror us.
They mirror, they feel soft, they feel seen. And Lindsay and I always use, you know, speak fully on us. Like I'm having this experience where I'm feeling like a little neglected, or I'm feeling a little fearful, or I'm feeling this thing, or I have this part of me, and that we know that part, and kind of even befriending where she knows the parts of me and I know the parts of her, and we know what's going to activate us. And working with that ebb and flow has been powerful, because for a long time, female relationships were really challenging for me.
Oh, wow.
I had really healthy, for the most part, masculine relationships, but female relationships were hard.
I would have never guessed that from you. Tell me something.
I'm number one girlfriend of all time. There was a lot of bullying. There was a lot of trauma around that when I was younger, physical, emotional, mental. And I think mostly though because of my mother, you know, because the relationship with my mother, it became really hard for me to trust women. I would get in relationships with women where we would be really enmeshed, and I would lose all sense of self. I would be like the sidekick. I would be, you know, whatever, just kind of pedestalize women a lot. And I just never could really trust them. And whenever intimacy would get real, whenever there'd be a real chance of intimacy, things would get a little crunchy, things would get a little hard. There would never really be conflict management or resolution. Things would probably blow up or they'd dissolve. And I could never really get to the place where I felt fully safe, with a lot of the women in my life. It would still be performative. I'd still be on my best behavior. How can I like be the best version of me and make them happy and do all the things? And it was really exhausting. And I think it is really a challenge for a lot of women to feel safe in intimate relationships with women because we've had so much sister wound and so much mother wound that we need to work through.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know how much you know about my story in middle school, just being bullied for a year and a half of, coming from a school of 60 to 600 or a class that size and being like not having a lot of friends and just my core, and then going to this larger school, getting into the in-group and then being kicked out 6 months later when a lot of the guys started liking me. And so this built a pattern inside me where I wanted to hide, thinking hiding was safe, that I thought that I was threatening people by being fully expressed and being myself. So I started to dim my vibrancy. And, I think that has been such a catalyst, those original moments in our lives, these imprints, these times can shape the rest of our life if we don't do the work. And there's layers to it. And so I think part of my work even now is just to keep tuning into what's my authentic truth and how do I give permission to people to have their full experience of me without hiding or control, like conforming to what I think that they want me to be. It's subtle, like you're saying.
Yes.
But it goes deep.
And you're so good at that.
Thank you.
You're so sovereign and you're so in yourself and you're so, such a pleasure to be around because there's such a consistency in your energy. Like it's just fully, from heaven to the core of the earth. Just, it's so safe and within yourself. It's really beautiful.
I feel the same.
Yeah.
I can feel the depth of work you've done.
Yeah.
And I can feel how comfortable you are in your own skin, that it makes it comfortable for me just to be around. Yeah. I remember the first time we met, we went to this influencer weekend and I sat next to you and I just said something and you were like, yeah. And you tapped my knee and I was like, oh, she likes me. And I could just hear this sweet little one. I was like, oh yeah, she likes you.
You know what's interesting is sometimes I will have projected on me like girl from high school a lot where I'm like, ooh, I'll like meet a woman and I'm like, and I can psychically attune to her. I'm like, fuck, you're projecting your high school girl to me just because I'm tall and blonde, whatever. And I'm like, and I can be really outgoing and extroverted. I'm like, oh no, I'm your high school bully. Like I'm that girl, I'm that mean girl from high school. I'm like,
but you're the healing experience.
Yeah, there we go. And then I'm extra.
Experience.
Literally, I'm like, I love you.
Yeah. Well, you
so
make
much.
it so clear. It's so safe to be with you. Yeah. And I think we can have that and heal those original imprints.
Yes.
As long as we're conscious of it.
Completely. And that's like being in relationship with you or any conscious friend. It's like having that really beautiful experience of being able to be honest. Like, oh, I noticed something in my body. Like I kind of closed up when we talked about this, or, you said that thing and I kind of thought about it and it made me feel this way. Like, how do you feel about it? And just, it's just, it becomes fun. You're like, wow, that's so fun that you said that, or that's so interesting. And when there are times where I get triggered or where there are times in my female relationships, just really being with my own work first. And I think a lot of times, I've been in relationships with women where they're like, I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
And their honesty is really just toxic.
Yeah.
It's actually not the truth because the truth is always love. And the truth is always, either pain or hurt. The truth isn't really anger. There's always things below anger. So I would be in relationships with women that would be like, I'm just being honest about whatever. And it'd be really unprocessed. It'd be really toxic and it'd be really painful. So now being in a space where it's like, if I find myself triggered, I can really move through that trigger and come to a place of like true honesty, which is usually hurt, or which is usually like, oh, something's coming up for me that I can work on through myself or I can work on in the relationship.
Yeah.
But again, I guess I'm curious, what you think about it. So for people that want to practice this and that may not have conscious friendships or relationships.
I'm like, you're such a good host.
But I do want to know from you, because what would you say?
Yeah. I mean, for me, 100% personal responsibility is the foundation. So if I get triggered, I'm going to always first look inside of me.
Yeah.
What's getting activated? Where was the original imprint? And how do I tend to that part of me? Because my philosophy and way of living is, if I try to manipulate and change you to be different, maybe I solve it once, but there's the pattern that somebody else is going to represent in my life. And so how do I look inside me to heal that or to resolve that, so I don't keep projecting it onto family members, kids, employees, anywhere else, clients? And so I'll always do my work to get curious, to bring inquiry. And some of my methodology is around questioning my beliefs, integrating the energy in my body. So also breathing into it, allowing it, or emotionally meeting that part of me, bringing it into my heart, rather than trying to only get it from outside. So first inside. So if I got hurt, I'll look at that. I'll really question it. I'll embrace the part that wants somebody to like me or whatever it may be. And then if it feels appropriate, if I feel safe enough in the relationship, if there's that trust built, then I'll also work it out with people. But if I don't have that and I don't have one person, I'm gonna find a community to support me in that way. Or I'm gonna read books and listen to podcasts and know that it's possible. But I do think what you were speaking about earlier, community is everything. Having that. And at least just one conscious friend to do the work with, if it's not a partner, you know, and we don't need it, but it's such a gift.
And I do think, you know, what I also got clear about in the past 2 years is the level of access and intimacy that people have to me, and sort of being a lot more clear and a lot more discerning about that. And so when I think about conscious work and intimacy and vulnerability in relationship, I'm actually very clear about who has intimate access to me.
Yeah.
And not every one of my friendships is the same.
Yeah.
You know, we are different with some friends. We have more fun with some friends. We get deep with some friends. There's just different types of a concoction that can be created with two energies. So I used to be kind of approaching every friendship the same, like, oh, maybe you could be someone that's my best friend, or you could be super close to me. And now I'm just a little bit more like, how does this relationship make me feel? Where are we at right now? Does it feel like this is something I can move forward with? Maybe a conflict resolution conversation would lead me to have more trust. And then more trust would lead me to share more and be more of myself. And so now having sort of just a lot of clarity on my inner circle and a lot of clarity of the people that are worth the crunchy conversations is really helpful, because things will come up in most relationships, and some friends are just, you love them dearly, but it's just the way they are.
Yeah.
You know, you just got to love them as they are. It's like, they're just always going to kind of be that way. That's who she is. And it might not be worth a conversation. It might not be worth the connection where you're spending a lot of time processing, but there are relationships that really deserve that sort of conversation, because that's trust.
Yeah.
You know, especially when you're psychic, intuitive beings like we are, it's very hard to get stuff by us, especially energetically.
Yeah. It's like, I felt that shift.
Oh my
from
God,
you.
dude. I was on a trip recently with some women, and they're very, very psychic. And it was, I told my angels, I was like, no more. I was like, they are not having access to my mind, because we'd be walking and I'd be like thinking about Ohio or something happening in Ohio, and they'd be like, how's Ohio? I'm like, stop. And I'm like, stop that. Like, or like I would turn a little bit and they would be like, what's up? And I'd be like, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I had somebody that worked with me that was the same way. And I was like, oh, I need a little bit of a boundary, a buffer, so that I can share what is appropriate to share. So I'm curious to hear how that works in your relationship with business with Lindsay. And if there's a story or an example of something that you guys moved through that helped you actually have the resolution, have the connection through whatever the tiff was or the challenge.
Yeah, we've gone through so many different parts of our journey. But what I will say is that although we've had conflict and we've disagreed and, you know, we have our own opinions and perspectives, we very much approach our relationship with love. We've never fought in a way where we raised our voices. We've never called names. We've always just come with a deep love and reverence. And at the beginning of our relationship, we were very much in this dynamic where I was super controlling. I was working a full-time job. She was working a full-time job. We were building the business. We were doing all the things. I'm a generator, so I have lots of energy. We were on a world tour. I had this dream. I was like, this is my purpose. And when my soul got the feeling of like, oh my God, this is it, it was really hard for me to turn it off. So I was just very, very controlling. And I also was very avoidant with her. She was very anxious. She was projecting her dad onto me. I was just kind of in a different phase. And so it was really crunchy. It was really psychically uncomfortable. There was a lot of her trying to appease me and she's not appeasing me.
Yeah.
Me almost being my mother, me being very critical.
Yeah.
So we had to work through that in the first couple of years, and we weren't as conscious then. So we were doing our own work in therapy, and that's when we first started to have conversations about how we were feeling. We were so grateful to have amazing people on the podcast like you when you come on that got to work us through that. And then the next couple phases were her stepping into her relationship and her stepping into motherhood and moving. And so that was really hard for me because she was my person, and I realized that she had been my emotional support. She had been almost my husband in a way.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't really getting that in my relationship. So there was a case where she had moved, to Brooklyn to be with her partner. And I just felt like completely neglected and abandoned. Yeah. And, there was that part of me. I remember one time I was sitting in the garage of our building and she sent me a voice note and she's like, hey, I don't really want to come back to LA to record right now. I'm just really in my groove. I'm really in my flow. And I was like, oh my God, just heartbroken. I was like, oh my God, she's leaving me. She doesn't care about the business. She doesn't care about me. Like, what does this mean for us? And our relationship is so deep and cosmic and meaningful and past lifetimey that it's very cellular with her. So it just feels so like heartbreaking. I was like, oh, such a bummer. So I could be with her and be like, I'm feeling like incredibly anxious about our relationship. She's like, I'm feeling incredibly avoidant. And we were just kind of in this perfect dance where we could heal her wanting to actually individuate.
Yeah.
Because we had been so codependent. Yeah. We had been in this relationship where we're building a business together. We are on tour together. We're spending so much time together. Our dreams are the same. It's just very a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of us together. And so she had in her move and in her new partnership and, now soon into new motherhood was really individuating. And I just wasn't okay with it. I wasn't ready for it. I was like, oh no, I want us to be us together. And so I had to really just like unblend myself from her, unmesh myself from her and really establish deeper connections in my relationships here that could really support me and give me more stability that I had been really leaning on her for. Also doing a lot of work in therapy.
Good for you.
And really a lot of psychic work. There was some, to get kind of out there was some contracts that we had made in past lifetimes that I had seen and that some of the people I had worked with had seen that I had to clear and then I had to cancel and then I had to really remove myself from so that I could feel a lot more free and a lot more, and so she could feel more free to step into her new phase of her life,
I hear that it was uncomfortable, but because you guys were going to therapy, you were doing your own work. It helped you navigate what was actually for both of your highest good, to individuate, to find your own. And so is there any advice or words of wisdom you would give to people that want to work with somebody that or even just any co-founders, even if it's not a friend?
Yeah. What I would say is that one of the practices Lindsay and I like to do is called a clearing conversation. And in a clearing conversation, it is very eye focused, but we like to have them walking. We like to be on the move when we're together. And so it's really nice to be, there's something that's happening too with your brain where you're walking side by side with someone. So you're like, we are on the same path. We are on the same road. We are on the way together. And we like to be outside in nature so that we have a lot of space around us. There is the sky, there is maybe the ocean, there's the grass. So we're surrounded by something that feels really calming and nurturing. It's not a busy city if we can. And then we're also not making eye contact the whole time. So there's something that can happen that can be challenging if you're saying truth to people if you're making deep eye contact. So not having eye contact in that way has been really supportive of our hard conversations. But what I will say is that there is a real depth and beauty that you can have within relationship, but then also knowing, I think women a lot of times will think that when they find something that they love, that they have to do it forever. And sometimes within partnerships or relationships, it might just be time to move on or evolve beyond what your partnership container has for you. So being okay with that as well and being okay with the medicine that it brought you for the time. But being in partnership, and especially a female partnership in business, is really challenging. It's really something that you have to be in your own therapy work for, and you have to take the relationship almost as seriously as a marriage, because you have money mixed together, you have your dreams mixed together, you have your future mixed together, you have so much that is so deeply important that it should be almost as important as your marriage because it's impacting that much of your life.
I mean, I'm biased, obviously, as a former licensed psychotherapist. I think that most people think about going to therapy as something was wrong. I remember I was on my honeymoon. I'm toasting on an island, champagne. I'm about to kiss Emilio. We're like celebrating. They're like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a therapist. And this man pulls me to the side. He's like, oh, I have this issue with my daughter. And I'm like, for one, not appropriate. Like, I'm on my honeymoon. For two, this is how we're looking at therapy through a cultural lens that something's wrong versus this is the people that are going to therapy are the ones that are living their most vibrant, healthy, alive lives. Like, they're proactively doing it.
Yes.
Coaching or any type of healing work, self-awareness work.
Yes.
Just supports us in living more open-hearted, open-minded. So I want to help shift that narrative because just like you're saying with your business partner, going to therapy, doing your own work is what helps you.
Everything.
So does it in marriage. So does it, like Emilio and I would do therapy. I mean, we've been together 14 years now. We've probably gone at least once a month, maybe twice a month consistently as a proactive conversation. So those clearing conversations happen because we don't get distracted by the kids, but we can actually not push things under the rug and have more intimacy and more connection. And life just gets so much easier.
And it can be joyful too. You can be like, sometimes with my therapist, she's like, whoa, how about that? Like, oftentimes I think people forget to celebrate and they forget to pull up. We're always like, once you reach one goal, most of the people probably listening already are on the next goal.
Yeah. That's called a nourishment barrier.
There you go.
So if they are not taking time to celebrate, it's like the seasons. You just jump to the next thing and then you're going to get burnt out. But when you take a moment to stop, to feel the nourishment, to feel the sunshine, the celebration, you feel fulfilled and then you have the natural cycle to keep going. That's where the hungry ghost comes.
Yes.
Where we're not stopping to just take in the nourishment.
Yes, which is huge. And so your therapist can also help you with that. And I found even the times where I don't have anything to talk about are sometimes the most powerful.
Yeah.
Like the other day I was talking about, I went to this group psychotherapy retreat called Onsite in Nashville. And somehow we got talking about this thing. And I was literally after 20 minutes, I was like, why are we but it always all connects and it always is all meaningful. And it's there in your mind, just kind of waiting for the invitation. And my therapist has also been so important because she's helped me trust people. I had trust issues with people for sure. I was someone that didn't trust people. Because I'm so energetically attuned, if I'm talking to someone and you're so amazing at this, it's so healing. If they would kind of check out or not pay attention, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, they don't care. I'm going to start asking them questions.
Yeah.
So I didn't trust people to hold me, to be paying attention. I didn't trust myself to be interesting enough to be able to hold someone's attention. So she's helped me trust people in a way that has been incredible for me and has been incredibly helpful for me.
Yeah. I think a really good friend, a really good coach, or a really good therapist can be a healing relationship, like using relationships for vehicles for our healing and awakening.
Yes.
Both and.
Everything. I mean, my healing has been the deepest in my relationships. It shows me the most of myself. It's just, it is a slingshot into your deepest growth. I realized at the end of my my marriage, one thing that I really, really realized was like, I was only loving him if he would be something other than he was. I was like, will love you if you do this, if you say this, if you are this person. And that's not love.
Is that somewhat what it sounds like what you learned as a kid?
Yeah.
And so there's that imprint.
Yes.
And so if we don't do the work proactively, we just unconsciously follow in the past generation's footsteps and then it goes further back.
Yep.
And so having the time to just wake up out of the paradigm that we didn't even know we were in supports us in shifting it.
Yeah. And that's so many people are in I'm still in paradigms I don't even know about.
Exactly.
I can't wait. You know what I mean? I can't wait to figure those out. Like,
I know.
We're in these these little prison cells. I remember in the Law of One, which is a text I really love.
Yeah.
It's a channeled text and they were asking Ra, the channeled entity, about us they were asking us about freedom. They were asking Ra about freedom. And Ra's like, you are slaves in so many ways you don't even know. He's like, I could not even begin to explain to you the ways in which you all are enslaved. And I think about that because it's like, once we think we're free, there's still so many more levels of our freedom that are available and possible. And it's the same with healing.
It's so subtle. I know my meditation teacher, Adi Ashanti, he's my favorite meditation teacher. So he'll start talking to you and just taking the mind off of its habitual thinking. And then he'll start going to silence. And at one point he'll drop in later in the meditation, who's meditating? And then you just pop out of the identity of thinking, I am this body, I am this mind, I am this whomever in that moment.
Wow.
And so having people that have gone further to just even that moment of taking myself to be Alyssa, this body, this mind, whatever, and it can come in and out in any moment, but it's just an appearing, it's just a happening. And so I'm just always so fascinated about watching other people, hearing their insights. I think having a mentor, having somebody that is safe, that has gone further, that can help us pop out of those paradigms that we don't even know we're imprisoned by is everything. A friend of mine who's a spiritual teacher, his name's Locke Kelly. I love frames. I think they're so helpful. He talks about waking up, waking down, and waking out. So waking up out of identification, I'm not this body mind. Waking back down in embodiment, I have a body mind, I'm not just this body mind. And then waking out, which is how does this live consciously in the world? And so some of these frames can help leave, even if it's a seed, whether it be a pop now, but out of identity, out of misunderstandings, so that we can live more free, live more authentically expressed.
Because you never know what's going to awaken someone.
Yeah.
It's so wild when I think about in my life, the things that someone has said to me that have, been a part of my awakening process. It's happened in such small, weird, random things. I'll never forget, I was really young. And one of my best friends at the time his name was Brandon. And there was another girl in our grade who was talking about Brandon. She was saying bad things. She's like, Brandon's changed so much. And Brandon's like, I've known her for 10 years. What does she think I'm going to do? And I just was like, oh yeah, we're supposed to change. And it was so small, but I was like, oh yeah, we're meant to change. And another time I had a friend where I was kind of in my loop. I was in my unconscious conversation about my body. And I was like, I need to lose 5 pounds and all that thing. He's like, you've been saying that since I met you. No matter your weight, you've been saying that.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, and it woke me up.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa. And it was just like such a beautiful mirror for me and like awakening that they probably don't even remember or know. And so knowing that we're in relationship with people that we can be providing them that awakening moment and really not even know it.
Yeah, that's nice to have those mirrors.
The
that
best.
feel safe enough to even give that kind of feedback.
Yes.
Yeah, I think relationships are a vehicle for this work.
Everything.
100%. I feel quite clear in relationships, maybe because I focus so much on it.
Yeah.
But where the rubber hits the road for me is around business. And so it doesn't matter if it's health or if it's like, as long as my bias is, as long as we use one area of our life to see where I'm getting stuck, where I'm getting attached. And in my reflection, anytime there's myself involved, I struggle. If there's an identity, an egoic construct that's wanting to get something from the physical world, there's suffering. So I think because my journey with love was a lot about being the one I was waiting for, really embodying that. I was no longer looking for it outside. Then all of the struggles dropped. I woke up to, I am the love that I'm looking for. It's not in another. It is the nature of existence. Now combing that same insight through business of like not looking for business to give me something, but to really have it awaken what's already here. Because so many of us can get into these unconscious loops. I know money can be a big one. Sexuality, anything that we don't talk about can have so much shadow work within it. And so again, using these triggers to look deeper into who do I think I am? What are the limitations I put on myself or my life? And then how do I use that's contracting me to free me?
I mean, if you figure out, so if business is what rubber meets the road for you and you figure it out, you're going to like fly away. You're going to dissolve because that is like, you have it all down. But I'm curious what parts of business feel like, what
For me specifically, I love...
Because you're very successful.
I love creation. I love serving. I love coaching. What has been an initiation for me is team. Managing, hiring, systems. That is not what I love. And I can't do it all. And so some of my work has come up, my personal development. Actually, I brought in a coach who I had my entire team work with. And I led the way with my own vulnerability, sharing what my trigger was at my job. So sharing that if I don't feel like they've got it, I will look and double check if they've got it.
What do you mean?
And then not build that trust with them because I have a high bar of excellence. And so looking at that pattern, if I don't trust that they've got it, then I need to do it to make sure in the first year of growing very quickly my certification program, I bent over backwards to make sure that my students never felt it. And I shared with them at the end of the year, they had no idea the level of bending over that I was doing as we were growing fast. It's much more stable and dialed in now with systems and things. But my, it will reflect in every part of our life. So my wounds were showing up there and, I couldn't manage, I didn't even have the time to slow down to do the work. And so because I wanted to make sure that everything was taken care of, and I got some time afterwards to really look at it and to have a conversation. I know as a former couples therapist, I would have each couple share, what are your wounds? Where did they come from? So we have more of that self-awareness. And I thought, why not do that in my company so that we can understand if I offer somebody feedback in a public Slack channel and it triggers their sense of, oh, I did something wrong and I'm being told I'm wrong or whatever their narrative is, then I want to know how to hold better space so that we can create a healing environment as an organization. Now it's like, that's the ideal. And then, we work through it. But even just bringing in my coach for me to lead with, here's my vulnerability. And he's reading our energy and sharing different energetic blocks that he's seeing. And I made sure that they all opted into it. But this feels like conscious business. This is leading towards how do we use a culture to support our healing while making a bigger impact in the world, but starting with ourselves, doing our own work, having that as a team. I'm still learning that as a team, having about 40 people right now. It's a bigger thing than I've ever done. I've not worked in a corporation before. I just started my own. And so
it's huge.
And there are people that love that. So I'm calling in my ideal right hand that can really just pour love into the team. And I create efficient systems and loves those things so that I can feel that partnership and also share my gifts on the front end more than the back end, and not one better than the other. But I think, that's how I'm navigating it. And that's one of the wounds that comes up of like, I'll do it. If you won't, I've got it. And then spreading myself thin and wanting to make sure that I can create the trust that people will do what they're going to say they're going to do and that I am supported. And so at one point I genuinely thought that it was about an outside problem. I was like, I don't have the person yet. I don't have the team. And then I really got to look at, no, every single thing in life is an inside job. It's all a reflection of the inner world. And so as I've been looking at what constructs inside me need to be shifted, then I can more easily receive the support that has been there that I wasn't able to receive. People trying to support me, and we'll always have some way that life reflects it. But that's where mine has been.
I was talking to Sam Skelly.
Yeah.
We were talking about that, how we'll have that experience on the team where, someone will do something, will fall short, it'll be a mistake or an error. And then we're like, where are all the errors?
Yeah.
And then we'll just be on hypervigilance of like, scan the website. I'm like, links aren't working. This email spelled, I'm just like, I will like that used to, I don't do it as much anymore, but that used to be my thing.
Yeah.
Because I was like, unsafe.
Yes.
This is reflecting poorly on me.
Yes.
Unsafe. You are not living up to my expectations. How can I find more of that to like build up my case and further confirm that I'm unsafe to be held by people and that I can't trust anybody.
Yeah.
And so that was a lot of my work too, is really not, I don't think ours completely relate, but it is really hard to be held as like a business owner and trust as like a business owner because you have a vision and you have like clarity of like what you want to do. And there are people that really want to support you in business, but within almost 30, one thing that I really love is the way that we interact is just so respectful and so honoring and so clear on boundaries, on communication. We are people that have really clear feedback, really clear and honest feedback, and we make sure that people are really okay with that. And we had to work through the team, the feeling of when I'm giving you clear feedback, it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. I love you. It means that we need to figure out this thing with work. So it's actually been something where I've had to use a lot of my skills that I've received in therapy or coaching or whatever it is with my team to support them because what I'm going to teach and coach them around their worth is not related to their work.
Yeah. Who you are is not what you do.
Oh my God, it's huge.
Yeah.
Because I remember I used to feel that too with my work and it's such a heartbreaking experience. But if someone's not doing their work, automatically, if my work's bad, they're going to go into I'm bad.
That's right.
You're now. And what would happen in the first years of our business is people were projecting mom onto me.
Any authority is going to happen in the workplace.
So I was mom, and I was, any authority. And that was working through that feeling of like being confused with how heartbroken people on the team would get when I would give them feedback or when it would not be positive, and just kind of having to work with and pull myself out of that dynamic and really work with like a new energy has been incredibly powerful. But there is like a great job that we have as conscious business owners to be leading business more from that space, more from that space, more from that self-responsible place. But it's such a beautiful thing, because working in an unconscious business space for so long was really painful. Really painful.
Yeah, I've had people come on my team and be like, wow, this is healing, just being in this environment. And I've not been in corporate America, and so I don't have a reference point, but we get to do it different. And and I think taking feedback is an art, and just being upfront and honest, and also giving them tools. I mean, we both run personal development companies. And so being able to share, we'll do, I want to teach them different tools that I found helpful. Not only does it support them personally, but then it can also support our performance, right? So I'm curious, how do you see the connection with healing and human potential? You're doing your healing work, and how that supports greater impact and creativity and expression.
And so when you say impact, it's so interesting, because what comes up for me is like a lot of my healing is actually kind of letting go of the belief that I have to make impact. And kind of like, because I had sort of an attachment to impact in the ego, where I was like, oh, I've got to make an impact, and I've got to, do these things. Like there was the part of me that's like, I got to change lives, and I got to do all these things. And now I'm sort of in a phase, and it might change, where I'm sort of pulling out of that. And I'm really just kind of trying to be as much of myself as I can, and in service to my creator and in service to my mission, and really just kind of keeping that focused on the self. And in places where it feels really good. So human potential and healing are so deeply integrated, but I think there was a point in my healing journey where it was like healing meant more potential for me, and it really did. It was so beautiful and powerful, but now it's sort of like healing means more self-love in a true way, because when we talk about self-love in my previous life, I'd be like, self-love, I'd be like, yeah, sure. And I wouldn't understand it. But when you cellularly understand self-love, and you really are at a place where it's like, oh, that's what it is. It's not about achievement. It's not about success. It's about being as clear on my mission and being as clear with myself every day and every moment that what I'm doing is aligned and on purpose. It's really about that. So I try and remove myself from like thinking about impact as much as possible, and really just focused on like, what could I do today? What feels good for me today? What is like the most aligned decision that I can make? And how can I stay in integrity with myself?
And that's beautiful. Yeah. So then it's not like I need to help others. It's like, how do I really serve myself? As a result of you serving yourself, it naturally impacts others. Because when we receive something, we want to share it. But it's not coming from, for a while I had to really get that I was part of the nourishment. Like rather than just giving, it's like, oh, how do I fully receive this within my own life and feel it fully integrated in myself, so that then I can share, but not a have to share. It just is like the heart wants out. It wants to express. But yeah, that's such an important piece, especially for service providers that want to help, 2s in the Enneagram, just people that are just trying to share and support, but from an unhealthy place. It matters where we're coming from.
When we coach people and when I work with people, I'm always so like attuned to that, because I'll hear so many women that have such deep desire to be in service. I remember working in the corporate world and wanting to be in a space of like, I want to feel like my life matters. I want to feel like I'm here for a reason. And people will come in, they're like, I want to do this podcast, or I want to create this business because I want to help women. I want to empower women. I want to help women, blah, blah, blah. And I'm always like, I always kind of pull it back. And I'm like, first of all, you need to be doing this for you.
That's
like
right.
100% for you, not only for the sustainability of your energy, because if you're doing it for someone else and they stop giving you the feedback that you're helping them be empowered, you're going to stop. So you need to be doing it fully for like, I actually want to feel really empowered in doing what I do, or I feel really called, or I feel really good, feels really good in my body to create a podcast or whatever it is. And so I actually am always like, your business and your service should the most serve you from the very most part. And it should be and when we're serving ourselves in a true way, because we could serve ourselves in an untrue way and people could be like, oh, what about business owners and billionaires that are in service to self?
Yeah.
It's detrimental in the end to them.
Yeah.
They're actually probably the least happy people in the world.
Yeah.
So I always focus on my own service rather than other people, because that's going to be the most sustainable and that's going to be the most impactful. And I can't really do it any other way. I wouldn't be able to sustain with that.
I mean, that's conscious to me because I find a lot of people, they want to help others because they're essentially trying to help that part of themselves.
What do you mean?
And so as they help that part of themselves, then they either no longer want that niche or it just comes from this more conscious place that you're speaking of.
You can see that in the social media content creator world. I remember seeing that with not dietitians, but like people in the health coaching space.
Yeah.
As you know, they really need.
In every niche. It happens in every niche. If you're unconscious. It's like, I want to help them, but it's really, okay, well, let's start with you. That's why I designed the whole certification program, to start with yourself so that then you can be of greater impact from a clear place, from a really clean place.
I'm always really kind of trepidatious of people that are like, I want to help people do this. I'm like,
why?
Yeah, what are you doing about it?
Yeah,
what are you doing about that? Because there's so much work that we can do on ourselves. So I think being mindful of that is like
100%. I mean, if we're really going to be using our life's energy to serve others, we've got to walk the talk. We've got to go through our own work, which doesn't end. And I think, I talk about this, but like the shadow of therapy is that we're always healing.
Yes.
And the shadow of coaching is that we're always becoming. And yet the foundation from both of them should be presence so that we really come from a place of being and becoming. Yes. Our humanity is healing and our essence is always perfectly whole.
Yeah. I was noticing that I wrote something about like spiritual narcissism.
Yeah.
And kind of the becoming thing.
Yeah.
And I was noticing that there was, I think the conversation around narcissism is really relevant in the collective, but I was really noticing this trend in the spiritual space where it's like, oh yeah, that version of me's died. I'm a different person than I was yesterday. And oh yeah, that was the old me, or I've changed. I'm moving so fast, I'm evolving. All of that is true.
Yeah.
And there's a part of us that's sort of running and sort of like always kind of shaming the older aspects of ourselves and trying to separate and move from the aspect of ourselves that we're now deeming as inadequate.
Yeah.
And we're feeling like we're superior even than the previous version of self. Because I felt like, I was like, why is everyone saying that they died today, died yesterday, they're different today? I'm like, there's such an ungrounded component to that that I want to be present for and mindful of, still honoring that I change and grow quite a bit, but not really getting so attached to the story of like, I'm different, I'm changing. It's like, I don't really know.
Yeah.
I don't really know.
And I think that's actually the most true place in the unknown.
Yes.
Yeah. And I know that you and I have a similar foundation of accepting all of it, to bring those parts that, even if it was an older version, to be like, oh, and that was the best it knew how to support me at the time. So it comes with love and compassion. And ironically, that's how we transform and grow.
Yeah.
But the conversation of I don't know, like that's the truest, deepest in the space of silence.
Because I don't want to be, and what I've done recently to love all versions of myself, I had my mom send me a picture from every year of my life.
Oh, wow.
So I have in my room, I have this like little collage of Krista and the pictures are hilarious. I had an eye patch year. I had braces year. I had like, we had all the things. I had lice one year, so I had to get really short hair as a whole thing. But I just can be with all versions of myself and just like love and love, honor, and accept, but also see what comes up.
Yeah.
I could even notice with sometimes where I'm judging. I'm like, oh girl, what was that haircut?
Yeah.
What was that shirt?
The current version, or when you were younger?
Younger.
Yeah.
Younger.
Yeah.
Because, there's a part of me that's just, I'm like, oh yeah, this is the best there is in my current version.
Yeah.
But as a practice for people, just like having that visual reference can sometimes be really helpful to not only see what comes up, to see what the thought is, being mindful of the thought, but to like work with the energy of like, oh, why am I in judgment of that part of me? Why am I in judgment of that self? Why do I have shame around that self? Maybe there's a memory that comes up, so that we can have that deeper self-love and acceptance.
Yeah. Really bringing those versions of you into your heart with compassion and acceptance.
Yes. Holding
That's
them.
what transforms it.
Yes.
And then we don't have to unconsciously project it into other people. Yeah. And another frame that I really like, because frames are fun for me, I like Ken Wilber's frame, talks about growing up and waking up. And I think there can be people that are quite awake in the world, and yet have a dysfunctional life. And others who have a beautiful prison. Like they have got a healthy ego. And we want, only the ego judges the ego. We want healthy, integrated egos, but to also discover what's beyond that. And I know that you work in both. You're foot in both worlds. And so I just honor. I try.
Well, I will say, and that the waking up thing reminds me of the period of like the 2020, 21 vibes where everyone is the conspiracy world. And I just like loved and appreciated that phase. I kind of woke up to that vibe in like 2011, but just realizing, when I kind of woke up and I saw a lot of it, ingested a lot of it, kind of percolated a lot of it within my body, but then also being like, oh my God, it could become its own prison.
Yes.
It could become its own energetic signature that you could get stuck in.
Yeah.
And it's actually not the end. And I think when people wake up to certain things, you can get really stuck. And it's so beautiful in life how many little hooks there are and how many levels. You're like, okay, I got to this level where I'm waking up to the truth that there's true evil in the world, or there's these things, whatever it is. And then whether it's aliens or starseeds, it's something I really love to explore and talk about, but I can't get stuck there.
Yeah.
Because I can't be like, oh my God, aliens are real and they're coming. And then I'm kind of just like out on my porch every night looking for them and not living my life. It's like, how can we always be mindful of like the trap doors or like the traps that there are, and finding other ways to get out of the tiny prisons that we can create, or the ways that the ego can sort of attach to things. And keep us stuck.
Yeah. It's tricky when we don't see it. It's like a fish in water. We don't even know the water's there. That's when, and when somebody can wake us up out of, oh, you're living in water. There's a whole other environment possible. That's a whole, to me, that's spirituality. And that really is, or awakening is really about waking up to the narrative of who and what I thought I was in this moment. And so I just come back to no thought is true. And just coming back to presence. And, but I love the psychological, the healing, the human potential. I love all of that. And underneath the foundation is wholeness, is presence.
Yeah, the what is true is very Course in Miracles vibes. The illusion, like what you see is a meaningless world.
Yeah.
You give all meaning to a meaningless world. And A Course in Miracles was really helpful for my growth and expansion. It's very radical. It's very direct.
Yeah.
It's very, if you were someone that was unawakened, could be very triggering. Talking about healing, talking about disease, talking about nothing having meaning, talking about specialness as the ego's way to keep us trapped and separate. And so it's very, very radical, but that was something that I read that was very helpful for me in sort of seeing through a lot of the illusions within the space. Because I think being in the spirituality space or self-development or wellness or whatever it is, it's really beautiful, but you can also get very stuck.
There's a whole other culture that gets sucked in too.
Oh yeah. You're like, and it can be very it can be very materialistic.
Yeah.
It can be very much in the vein of materialism too. So it can be like adjacent to that,
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Eckhart Tolle's work.
Oh yeah.
That A New Earth was the book that changed my life.
New Earth was the first awakening book for a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
It just rocked my world. And I could see ego in every culture, everything. It was just like, here's the through line. It gave me a new lens. It gave me a new light. So if I were to the pain body.
Because you know what I love about the pain body too, and in our work, it's unblending. When you're like, oh, I see Alyssa, but you're having a pain body experience. That's not you. That's your pain body.
That's right. There's compassion.
Yes.
You just got taken over by your unconscious.
Yeah. So whenever we can unblend, whether it's through IFS or pain body parts, and kind of pull it out of ourselves.
Yeah. Bring presence.
There's a part of me that's activated that feels really angry.
Yeah.
Like then it's not me. Yeah. Then I'm like, hey girl, what's up? I can kind of be like, oh yeah, that's not me. That's why I was laughing with myself today, because I was thinking, I'm like, about IFS and why I love the work. And I was like, oh, I love the work because it's like, I could not take responsibility, but also take responsibility.
Yeah.
It's like this beautiful dichotomy of it.
Yeah. And to say yes to all the parts. They all have a place. They've just been misguided.
Yep.
That's the foundation of wholeness, of acceptance.
Yes.
And I love all your wisdom and all the juicy nuggets. And I thank you for sharing just so much of your vulnerable experience and your, both with relationships and conscious business. If you were to share with people, if you had a message to share, what would it be?
I'm going to take this seriously.
Yeah.
And really think, I got to love, be here now. It's just such a good one, because I'm always like mindful. I'm like, how can this apply to more people?
Yeah.
Because I wanted to say love God, but I know some people don't really jive with the word God.
Yeah.
So I think be here now. Such a good one. Not original, but
no, but it's just the through
classic
line. It's just the through line.
Yeah, because you're like, oh.
Right now.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had a mentor tell me to use the word God until it had no charge to it.
That's what I did. I was like, ooh, why is this so uncomfortable for me?
Yeah.
Why do I judge people that say God?
Yeah.
And, I remember for so long with the word God, I had the charge around it. And I was like, why am I letting that be the defining if I'm having a relationship with God or not? And God is such a powerful, charged word, but it feels so right. And it feels like the potency of it is something I really appreciate and what I really, really relate to. So I had to reclaim that word for me and what it means for me, and that it can mean something outside of the church. That I think for so long I had it within the context of religion, especially the Catholic Church, that I was like, oh no, that's not going to keep me from my relationship with the Creator, the Most High. And reclaiming God as a word that I really use has just been so amazing.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Be here now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be here now.
So for those that want to just stay connected, know about you, where can they find you?
Well, you can go to Almost 30 Podcast for the podcast, which you're going to come on. I can't wait for our juicy conversation. And then it's Krista on Instagram or any socials. It's ITSK or ISTA.
Yeah. So much inspiration that you're sharing in the world.
Love you.
I love you. Thank you for being here.
I love you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much for doing this work that changes the world, starting with yourself. It truly does make a difference. And if you're finding value in this podcast, a cost-free way to support us is by leaving an up to 5-star review. It does mean the world to us. And as a thank you gift, we're going to send you one of the most powerful tools that you will ever discover. You're going to get behind the scenes access showing you how to live into your full potential without letting fear hold you back from stepping into your dreams. Just head over to Apple Podcast or Spotify and leave a review now. You can take a screenshot before hitting submit and then go to alyssanobriga.com/podcast to upload it. And make sure to have your automatic downloads turned on wherever you listen so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. I have so much magic I can't wait to share with you. And you can find all this information in the show notes below. But lastly, if you're on Instagram, I love connecting and hearing from you. So come on over and say hello. I'm at Alyssa Nobriga. Thank you again for being here. I cannot wait to share more with you.